I wanted to, break down those barriers and explain what, investing is about, which is a passion, it's a joy, and it's a journey. It's not about just making greedy profit. It's about actually embracing the positives about who you're supporting. You're being a supporter of someone or some sector or some theme.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Junior Gladiator Kidpreneurs. Today we're having a slightly different approach. We usually interview kids and get them to share their inspiring stories, but today I wanted to talk about something that keeps coming up with parents. This is something that was always a very taboo topic when I was growing up, but now I think people are more willing to start talking about and understanding finances. So I have an amazing lady here with us today who is a global wealth accelerator, and she'll explain what that means. I have Rebecca Ellis with us today, who's flown all the way from Geneva to be here to talk to us about money and about finance. And I think this is something that we as parents really need to not just educate ourselves on, but also have that knowledge so that we can share it with our kids. So Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really honoured to be here.
It's a pleasure. So just before we go into what it is that you do, just explain a little bit about who you are and why you do what you do.
My name is Rebecca Ellis. I come from Devon in the UK. So I'm a British national. I've been living in Switzerland for the last 15 years. I started off my career in private banking, moved to Switzerland, and now I'm an independent financial consultant as my day job. But my passion in life beyond my work with my clients is actually accelerating everyone that I'm around. So I play rugby, women's rugby, which is quite a growing sport now globally. But I'm really proud to accelerate people by sports, but also by knowledge. And that's when I collaborated with Rania when I was talking about an experience with one of my clients who said, Rebecca, you've educated me so much on being able to have a great partnership. So now I can debate and challenge you about your advice. Could you take my children and could you coach them for me or teach them? And I was like, I'll be absolutely delighted to. 2 young girls who are in Thailand. My client, he's an international expat, lived in 4 different countries. So they were very rounded and very curious. So I was like, but if I'm going to explain investments to children, I have to explain it in a language that they will understand. And actually, the content wasn't any different to what I taught their dad. But the difference was the examples and putting it in a language which they felt comfortable with. My advice has always been about comfortable, making people feel comfortable because, as you say, finance is a bit of a taboo subject, especially in the UK, especially in regions outside of London. People don't really talk about money. So I wanted to, break down those barriers and explain what, investing is about, which is a passion, it's a joy, and it's a journey. It's not about just making greedy profit. It's about actually embracing the positives about who you're supporting. You're being a supporter of someone or some sector or some theme. I sat down, I looked at the risk profile, and I was like, okay, let me change this up and do it. They loved it. The call went on for 2 hours. It was a Zoom call with the Wasa in Thailand. And afterwards, I'm still their manager at their bank. And I'm happy to say that they're...
The kids?
The kids, yeah.
Oh,
they
amazing.
have portfolios by themselves.
How old are they?
Now they're 15 and 13.
That's
and I started
incredible.
with them at 8 and 10.
Amazing.
So obviously the dad is still with me, but they're very happy. And now they're more curious about life in general. And they're both doing very well in their own domains. So one is very sporty and one is very academic. They love having a chat about what's happening, what's going on, and I can see that this is really nurturing them. So like with my sports, learning about what investing is about, which is not just about making money, it's a part of it. That's perhaps the way you can say you've been successful, but actually how you support and get other people to support your themes or your companies or your sectors is really important. And for them, they're just growing and they have independence now. They don't need daddy to tell them how to do it or mommy how to do it. They can do it by themselves. And for me, when I met you, I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be a really great collaboration because, we're both, championing the same thing, which is independence and growth of those amazing minds.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess this is one of my gripes with school because for me, I look back at my financial education, and actually I had to look deep at this because I noticed that it didn't matter how much money I earned, and I always used to earn good money when I was in employment because I was in sales.
Yeah.
So there was no cap on how much money that I could earn. But no matter how much I earned, I never seemed to have any. And I analyzed, okay, what's going on? Why is it that when money comes to me, that's not the problem. I can generate money, but as soon as it comes to me, it's gone again. And that would be through either spending it or loaning it out or giving it to a friend or a family member. I couldn't hold on to it.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to a workshop, and there was a lady there who was into wealth management. And she said, for you to understand your relationship with money, you need to understand where your education comes from. So I started to think about what was my financial education when I was growing up. And the only financial education that I had was from my parents. Yeah. And they were both, my dad was an entrepreneur, but, he was I wouldn't say a failed entrepreneur, but he never really made it big. And my mum was an employee. So phrases in our house like money doesn't grow on trees, who do you think we are, the Rockefellers, rich people are bad people, were very common. Yeah. So I guess when I started to analyze where my financial education came from and what that financial education was, it wasn't positive.
Yeah.
And I really had to work with that.
Yeah.
So why is it that schools do not teach financial education? Why are we not talking about finances with our kids in school when it's so critical to living a happy, abundant, and fulfilled life?
Yeah. I think schools shy away from it because they feel it's not their responsibility, especially in Geneva and also Dubai. It's a multicultural place, and so there's a lot of cultural differences about what money does and is. For me, I think this is why schools are very fearful of it. They show it a little bit in mathematics, as children progress. They talk, they sort of tap on the subjects, but they're not willing to actually say this is a subject. And it's one of the barriers that we do need to break down. But they are obviously, their stakeholders are the parents. And at the end of the day, they want to keep the parents absolutely happy. And so by unintentionally doing something which upsets them, even though it might be very innovative, they don't want to do. And that's where, even today, it's surprising when we're in this society that looks at positivity, intentions, and planning, that this is still very much overlooked and it's left to the parents. And now that comes down to the parents' mindset. So one thing that I did, which was a game changer in my life in terms of my career, was learning about behavioral finance. So behavioral finance is understanding your emotional connection with money. How are you connected to money? Do you have a positive relationship or a negative relationship? And if it's a negative, it's not bad, and then you can understand how to break that down. But there's no one or the other. It's about your biases. Why do I not want to share my toys? Or why do I want to be like this? What is the driver behind that gives you that worry that you have scarcity in your life? What is that driver? So behavioral finance is something I adopted. One of the banks that I worked for did it as this is just something fun and, interesting to do. But I actually adopted it. And when I adopted it with my clients who were financial professionals, hedge fund managers, investment bankers, it actually broke down a lot of barriers, because even though they're successful in the investment business, and, a lot of people looking after those types of clients can get very scared and intimidated. Like anyone, they're just a human being. And like anyone, they have emotions and they have worries and they have dreams. And their dreams was, I've worked so hard, I give 110% of my time to my work and I leave 10% for my family. I can only do 120% in my life because I can only do that. They were very worried about losing. And a lot of biases around loss and loss aversion was, came out in those discussions. And once I understood it and broke that down to what that actually meant, we actually made more advances and actually they became much happier. And most of them now are entrepreneurs because we had a big financial crisis a long time ago before most of your kids existed. But now I feel that they are happier people because they understood who they were through my partnerships with them. So behavioral finance is for everyone, and for kids and entrepreneurs, and especially kid entrepreneurs, the ones that you're developing and nurturing, they need to understand where they come from. And they can understand from the age of 5, even 3 perhaps, maybe that's too early. But you can understand because we all mirror what's around us. And if we mirror our parents, and then we start to have a critical mindset and critical thinking, which is what you need in entrepreneurship, then you say, okay, well, mummy might do it like that, but maybe I need to do it something different because my friend or I went to the Kid Entrepreneur course and I understand I can do something different. Maybe I should try it like this and have a discussion with her. But earlier, this isn't the new child or the new entrepreneurs that you're nurturing, and you're giving them the confidence to ask those questions. And for me, it's really about breaking down those barriers, about having open discussions, and that you can only do that when you understand yourself. So that is in every facet. That's money, that's life, that's your dreams and desires, understanding why, your why. And then once you know your why, you can then go on and apply it. So when it comes to money, and going back to your example about, you earned and you generated a lot, but you never had any. That's such a common thing that I've got with all my clients. Oh, but it's this or it's that. It's the new house. It's the third house, or I want to renovate, or I want to do this. I always say, look at what your objectives are and let's work backwards. So what is the dream? How do you want to get there? And when do you want to get there? And then let's look at the detail. And then let's set boundaries and plan. So planning and saving can seem very simple, from piggy banks. Why am I doing this? When I had pocket money, I was never encouraged to put it into a piggy bank or spend it. I did a bit of both. And
that came from parents,
That came from parents, but that came from, you might want to keep that for another day. It wasn't done in any intentional way. But if you're more intentional with the outcome, and that's what the Global Accelerator is about, is being intentional with your outcomes and intentional about what you want to do when you know yourself. And if you're like me, I'm a more risk taker. I like risk. I have to be a bit more measured and get more information about how I make my investment decisions. So I wasn't a gambler. There's a difference between gambler and risk taker. But
you're calculated, I'm guessing.
But I'm now much more calculated. When I first started, I would be like, okay, but you need to be that. If you want to break barriers, like, we see NVIDIA, we see the whole disruption that we saw through COVID, it accelerated something that was coming into our lives very quickly. And to be an entrepreneur, an accelerator, and, ride that wave, you need to take risks. You have to take risks. It's part of being an entrepreneur. Sure. That is the definition of entrepreneur, is being able to innovate and take a calculated risk. So for me, it's all about understanding who you are, looking at critical thinking, and then applying it, and also applying then, security blankets such as I will save some, I will plan. But I will plan because I know I'm planning for something. Once you know that you intentionally have an opportunity and a goal, you then do far better than when you're just, there's something, in 20 years' time, when I'm an adult or when I'm 21, well, you might want to do it before then. Maybe you want to do it in 3 years. Maybe you can if you plan for it. So it's really looking at that and then, analyzing. It's the same thing with the entrepreneurship. It's planning and reviewing and looking at your goal setting.
Amazing. Do you find that sometimes in families, because one of the things that I sometimes see with parents is that, we're going through these principles of finance. So we're making children feel comfortable talking about money, which is not something that we were raised with. But then we see, obviously the parents also need to be involved in that process. Otherwise, the child's talking one language and the parents are talking something else. Yeah. At the same time, we need mum and dad to also speak the same language. So you might get mum or dad who has a scarcity mindset, and then the other parent who has a very abundant mindset. And then the child sort of feels, I don't know which one is right and which one is wrong. So how would you, if you were working with a family, would you work with both mum and dad to make sure that they were aligned and then start working with the child? How do you work with that process?
It depends on if they come to me as a family, like we as a family want to learn, I would look to set group sessions with them and find out, the behavioral personality tests, which I've developed, and I have, a very unique test taken from different behavioral finance studies and white papers. I make it a bit more fun, a bit more applicable, not so boring. I will get all of them to do it. And it's very similar to when I have a couple who I'm managing. They're going to have very different views. Normally they do. Normally they're yin and yang.
Who tends to be more of a risk taker, and who tends to be more of a passive investor or a conservative investor?
it starts off with generally in gender. Unfortunately, it is the way it is, so I have to say it the way it is. Gender-wise, men take the forefront, and the woman likes to sit back and listen. Actually, she's the decision maker. In some relationships, some not, but actually the man will refer, or the male will refer to the woman about, are you happy with that? So eventually she is the decision maker. So the whole thing about behavioral finance, which I find fascinating beyond the emotional identification and understanding, is the way and mode of communication, because you can identify your emotions, you can know where you're going, but if you can't communicate that in a way that you're listening to, then it's pointless. So through the testing that I do, I look at their communication styles, I look at how they communicate, and that will give me how I communicate to the family. And then I will perhaps set different things for different people. I'll give them their homework individually. I will give them group homework. But if they, as a family, come to me, they tend to want to make a positive change. Generally, I get, as I did with my client, a parent who's very passionate and wants to develop. And that's why it's really interesting to see them allow their children to do it by themselves, because they know that they can do it, but they want to have better conversations. So if there is a very diverse views, if one is yin and one is yang, then what I try and do is work with them independently before the child sees or hears that, and trying to get them to understand what is their common goals, because they're a partnership for a reason. So we want to find a common goal there that they're happy to work with, and then through that, normally that trickles down to the child or the children to have a better view set of what mum and dad are saying. But sometimes you only have one who's passionate and not the other. You just have to try your best and try and give them critical thinking. At the end of the day, it's about them making decisions. So it's not about what's right or wrong. Everything is right for some people and everything is wrong for some people. But the point is about making their own decisions. So I think the idea is just try and give them positivity, that mistakes will happen. Sometimes failure is important. You need to learn from base zero to go to the top of the mountain. You can't go from, middle of the mountain to the top of the mountain. Sometimes you have to fall down. And that will happen in money. There will be journeys where you will have, events outside of your control, but how do you react to it? How do you emotionally say, okay, that happened, I know what I'm doing, I'm okay with it? It's normally the reaction of someone who wants to exit or gets very scared because they don't understand and they're not being communicated. So communication is the key, the lubricant to all of these different parts which add up to being a successful person, entrepreneur, and eventually in your finances that will tally along afterwards.
Yeah, and I've read some stats the other day about the number of relationships that end in divorce in and around money. Not having these critical conversations. We meet someone, we're all in love, we get caught up in the whole, infatuation, we get married, and suddenly we realize, okay, we have very different views on how we want to invest our finances or how we see money. What benefit do you think that it would have on couples that were still in that dating game before they decide to get married, to say, look, this is my view on finances. This is how I see our family finances being invested and being spent, versus going into this blindly and then figuring it out. Have you had couples where? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think I read the same article. The key element that was shouting out to me, planning. You mean you want to have children together? Well, how are you going to have children together? If you don't plan for it, I mean, obviously, it's part of being a couple is to think about maybe to have children or not to have children. It's your independent opportunity to decide if you want to do that. But if you're planning to have children, then you should be planning to talk about your finances. And I think this is the lack of confidence around communication. Communication is very important. Okay, we're in love. We want to have children together, then it's but how? What's your view? And your view is not wrong. My view is this. Okay, where's our common ground? And I think good couples, strong couples, successful couples are able to say, what's your view? What's my view? And listen. Listening is a very important element that I think some couples miss, that they say one thing and the other person is hearing something completely different because they're not listening. So listening, communicating, that communication is key. And then from there, if you have very different views, how do you overcome them before you start? So I have a personal experience of having a strong communication with a partner who we sorted out millions of things because we communicated and we put clearly what our intentions were about what we wanted to do. And once you do that and you listen, it's very important. So when I've had couples that have very different views, it's generally about actually helping them communicate better before we get to the money stuff. So
it's marriage counselling first.
It's called counselling, actually. Yeah. It's behavioral finance is maybe the money psychologist, but I find being, an advisor, a trusted advisor, I'm not just talking about money. They have dreams, they have businesses. They're asking me about a lot of different things, a lot of content. And I'm their confidant. They come to me and say, well, what do you think? Because money isn't separate to life. Life is it's integrated.
And I guess when you're talking about sensitive topics like money, then there's a huge amount of trust there from the people that you work with to you, because you have to trust someone.
Yep.
When you're investing money or you're taking advice on investing. So then they look at you, I guess, as an expert in many fields, because like you say, a lot of it is psychological.
Yeah.
And how do we integrate that as a couple and as a family?
And I would say one more step further is the next step. Like what happens, I find the current living status and helping them with money is actually relatively easy once you have that trust. You have to build trust, you have to gain trust, and you have to show that you can add value. But the next phase of trust is when you have to come to difficult conversations like about what do you want your money to do? What footprint or handprint do you want to leave in life? And how do you want it to benefit your children? That's a very complicated decision about where the money goes next. Succession planning, next generation planning. There you have to have gained trust because then you're actually delving into the deep psychology of a couple, of what they want for their children. And if they've been successful and they're leaving assets or they want a particular view, that can bring up a lot of other conversations which are quite complicated. And obviously the mechanisms to protect and make sure people benefit or charities to benefit as you would like them to is another thing. So that for me is why I'm not a banker. I'm a confidant and their advisor. I'm their trusted advisor that actually helps them with that whole life management of what they want to achieve. And if all they want to achieve is giving it to a donkey sanctuary, which one of my clients' parents did.
Oh, that's
nice. She was very happy because she's like, my mum loved donkeys.
Aww.
And donkeys are well looked after nowadays. So in that particular country. So no, at the end of the day, she understood because they communicated. So that's the key. But it's a really interesting job. That's why as an accelerator, when I joined Pi, when I said to Rania, who's the founder of Purposeful Innovators, I was like, I'm doing this very interesting, risk profiling for children. It's really fun, actually. I'm really enjoying it. And then she was like, well, let's develop this into financial literacy. Let's actually go out there and teach people because obviously that's what you're doing. And I said, I was like, okay. And then I just basically downloaded my brain over a summer and wrote a course. So I'm really excited now that we're actually at the stage where we can develop this. We have this finance focus in February. We're going to do that every year now. And it's just to raise the awareness to kids, to your entrepreneurs, to their parents, and to everyone that, money management is not taboo and that it's just a conversation about how you can learn from each other.
Incredible. And so tell us a little bit about the program, the kids program, because obviously,
yes,
I'm very interested in the kids program. What does that look like and how deep do kids go? Is it like different modules that they would complete and then move on to the next? How do you structure that?
So what we like to do is work with facilitators, people that want to deliver the program. So that could be a facilitator, i.e. parent. That could be a facilitator as maybe, an entrepreneurial group like ourselves. The idea is that you can go as light or as heavy as you want. So we've inbuilt depths to it. So if you wanted to do like the broad base program, which is 14 modules now, you can do that. And there is a criteria of what is, basic, intermediate, and advanced. And then each level, you can actually go down a deeper level so that you can actually then make it a much bigger program. Depending on the kid's age, will depend on their concentration. Kids have a lot of concentration if they're interested,
of course.
But you have to activate their mindsets in different ways. They're not going to sit down at a table for 2 hours. They want to move. They want to use technology. They want to, role play, use games. So I think the most interesting thing for me was that how do I activate the program? What activation do I need to do to make it actually impactful
and fun at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, make it fun, like make it relevant. And I found a lot of different materials. So I developed and used different sort of mediums that we found through various channels, and it was really interesting. But the point is, we can do it in a very light 8-week program, which is, I would say, the light version. But if you really want to take it to the next level and use it, it would be probably a learning curve over 3 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just to get to be advanced. And we even talk about digital money, cryptocurrencies, what is, Bitcoin, blockchain, because all these things are going to be more and more relevant. This is coming at a very fast pace. It is a fantastic elevation in our digital transformation that we're going through in this lifetime. So understanding it takes some techniques. So for younger kids, for example, they understand what a mobile phone is. From the age of 1, they know that they want mummy's phone to play the game. So they all know what Apple Pay is. They already know what digital money is.
They're using it, right? Using it. Roblox or whatever game,
exactly.
Minecraft.
Minecraft is an excellent game, and they already using all of these things, but it's just putting a frame around it, which is different. They haven't seen and they maybe not aware of. So beyond children that have, let's say, the ability to access technology easily, we also want to help children that are maybe less privileged, and we have some connection in Kenya. For example, we work with a resource center there, and we look at children who are, let's say, more challenged in accessing digitalization. That said, Kenya is actually very advanced because they have mobile money for a very long time, and they were one of the innovators, I think, 25 years ago now. It's called M-Pesa. So they're actually more advanced than we were in let's say, Europe and the Middle East in terms of that. But going back to the point, which is framing, what technology does, they already use it. So it's not too complicated. It's just how you share the knowledge with them and what frame you put it in. If you put in a frame about, if you go into Minecraft and you do this is what you use. Oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah, I get it. And then, so they are super intelligent nowadays. Children, we were, I'm sure, intelligent for our generation, but nowadays they have so much accessibility, maybe too much accessibility, but that's why bringing role play, games, actual activating and getting them to interact with each other is just as important as using future technology or current technology, which is the new toy in the room. So I think children can be very taken by screens, and I think most parents are worried about screen time and the what effect it has. But that's why we put in the program a lot of role-playing activities, physical activities, and it's better to be done by group than done individually. But a parent can be role-playing, and it's healthy to generate the creativity in those mindsets to do that. So it's a combination effect. But as I said, we built in levels, so it can be taught deeper, and the idea is that maybe after the first round they want to come back and do a deeper round. So it can be, it really depends on the time allowance that they have, because obviously if they're going to be a kid entrepreneur, they need to focus on their entrepreneurial skills. If they're going to do finance, so they need to, obviously it's like anything, you have to have a healthy mindset and a healthy balance, and understanding how much you need and how much they want, and then it's just tailoring it to them. So we've made a very tailorable course, even though I know tailorable is not a word.
But, we can make up our own words.
Exactly.
No one's
That's
judging here. And so is this something that you want to roll out within the education sector? Are you approaching schools to talk to them about, okay, we have this program now, we can bring that as part of the curriculum? Or do you think schools are just not quite there
They're not
yet?
ready for it yet.
Okay.
They're not ready for it. I think what we want to do is test it on the innovators. So that's why actually working with yourself, being here today is fantastic, because it's really exciting that we're working with the innovators. Innovation means that you're pushing something forward that people haven't done before. So we're really excited to see your group, your team, your children, and the whole kid entrepreneur take this on, because they are the innovators and they are the people going forward. So for me, working with innovators who have the same mindset is much easier. And then the schools will be like, actually, we want it. So
because there's a demand.
There's a demand. So I want to work with parents who want to improve the life of their children and also get them ready for the world ahead. I want to work with kids who are just really curious, because I want them to enjoy it. And the hope is if you enjoy something, you adopt it much quicker than if it's taught to you at school. Schools do a brilliant job, and I've seen some brilliant schools, especially here in Dubai. And it's really, for me, wow, how much they've evolved since my time. But I think at the end of the day, for this moment of time, maybe in 2 years' time, we will see schools who are more innovative to take it on. But for the minute, I think it's really to try and make it passionate and something that people want to do, not something you have to do. Very different mindset.
Well, I guess that's all the whole point of learning with a child. Yeah. If they're interested and they feel passionate about something, then they're open to learn.
Yes.
The minute it feels like school and algebra, they kind of have a mental shutdown.
Exactly.
They don't want to go there.
Yeah.
And how do you see, because right now we are moving into this digital arena, which I think for kids is really fun and it's really energetic and they're ready for it. But I see as adults, we're a little bit more hesitant because fear of change.
Yeah.
Right. So we're as adults thinking, okay, what's coming? How does the future look for us and certainly for our children? How do you see the whole financial landscape changing over the next 5 years?
Well, I've already seen it change massively in the last 5 years. And actually, when I sat back the other last year, when I was reviewing where the markets are going and what was happening and why certain things weren't moving the way they should do or how I thought they would move, I actually sat back and realized, wow, that's the game changer of algorithms in the market. There are computers that now will buy and sell very instantaneously. There are robot advisors. So the market has changed because you don't get in the statistical world. It's now very easy to predict and deviate. But the market isn't a robot and it's not even a human being. The market is a place where humans interact about money and the economy and businesses, what they feel successful. No one ever saw, for example, I use it again because NVIDIA is the new, it's been a passionate favorite of mine for years, but it's excelled and because it's hit a market, it's providing the engines for AI. And so in terms of embracing technology, we have to, but we are humans, we're smarter than computers. We're the people that compute the computers. So in terms of actually, some of the advisors that I have worked with in the past said, no, it's a buy and hold strategy and that's how it is. But no, you can't. You have to be very active and you have to be smart with how you're investing. And that is actually now, not yearly reviews just to see how it went and what happened. Is actually, is my techniques correct? Do I need to modify what I'm doing? Do I need to follow different things? And that's, as advisor, that's what I've done in terms of my investment management strategies. I have now become far more active than, let's say, I was 5 years ago. So 5 years forward, to answer your question, I think that will continue happening. I think technology is an enabler to make us more productive. We shouldn't be fearful of it, but we should also be critical of it in terms of critical thinking in a positive mindset. So for me, I think AI gives a lot of benefits. There is fear and there is perhaps a bigger discussion that is a huge discussion to have by the powers that will be. But I think for us, for the kid entrepreneurs, for children, it's a great enabler to get through a lot of the heavy stuff, which is not necessary. What we want to be doing is the smart stuff. We want to be thinking smart, acting smart. And I think technology will transform how we do that. So I think we should be excited about it and look forward to it and then embrace it.
Yeah, and I see kids like, I was looking at my oldest son, so he's just going through his whole GCSE process now. And I had a parents' evening a couple of weeks ago, and he did prep me. He said, look, I'm just going to pre-warn you. I think my English teacher's not very happy with me. I said, okay, no problem. We'll deal with that when we come to it. So anyway, we went online. And she said to me, she said, I do have an issue with Kayam. And I mean, I don't like the word issue anyway, but I said, what is that? She said, well, he's using AI. And I said, fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
She said, but they can't use AI in school. I said, but then maybe the school system needs to change because whether we like it or not, whether we embrace it or we don't, this is their future. So I use AI, for my own business, my own work, and I don't use it all the time, but I do use it for certain things, and it shortens my time doing proposals or presentations. It gives me more time to focus on things that I need to be focusing on.
Yeah.
So I embrace it, and I had a conversation with her. I said, do you think at this stage that maybe the current education system that we have is perhaps outdated, and it's not preparing children for the world in which they will live in. It might be okay for the world that we lived in, but their world is very different. So perhaps, and maybe this is a conversation for part 2, but maybe, and what's your take on that the education system now needs to modify, it needs to change, it needs to give kids these skills, these life skills, finance, entrepreneurship, having awareness in the digital era. What can we do as parents to help support that change that maybe they're not getting in schools?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole wording issues, for me, that's a really bad word to use as number one. Number two, I would have been happier if she would have said, I am not, when it's against the rules in school, but I like what he did because it was entrepreneurial, and I like his resource mindset, that he's thinking, what can I do to make this more efficient? How is this going to help me do this? And asking the questions, so what did you learn from that? And look at his critical thinking, his smart mindset to say, okay, I'm going to cut some of my time. Now, obviously, it depends on how he was using it in lots of detail. But generally, if she was curious to ask, well, I'm happy but unhappy with you, then he would have said, but why are you unhappy? And then explain the rules.
Have a conversation.
And then he could have said, but yeah, I learned this. But the fact that he had a bit of smart thinking, he decided that he wanted to be more efficient and more productive. These are things that we want from everyone in the workplace. So why is this a negative? Why was it seen as a bad thing? I find that very... I hope he's okay about it and he got over it. Obviously, he prepared.
Oh, yeah, I think it lasted all of 5 minutes. I mean, they bounced back very quickly.
I believe the school should change their mindset and say, we do this for a reason because actually it's going to hurt your learning. But if he understood that, he would be like, okay, well, next time I won't do it. But at the moment, it's just a stick and it's not actually explaining why, maybe because they don't understand why. But the point is, AI, if it's put in a positive mindset with a positive outcome, and also embracing why those kids who were entrepreneurial enough to find solutions, celebrate those solutions, but then explain the reasons, then that would change his mindset about everything. And there will be a better place for the teacher to have an easier conversation to explain to him, and also then maybe say, well, we need to change the policy at the school. Maybe we can use AI in certain circumstances and not be everything or nothing. So I think I would say I would celebrate the positives from that, and I think you did a very good job.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about investing, because this is a very hot topic now for parents that maybe they do have funds, but maybe the funds are sitting in the bank or they're sitting in a savings account. And we all know that with funds sitting in a bank, they are losing money, every year on inflation and etc. So what advice would you give to a parent that has some funds available? They want to maximize the return on their investment as much as possible. A lot of parents that I speak to are conservative investors. They don't want to take a high level of risk. So they have some money. They want to have investments. Where would they be? Where do you think, okay, this would be a safe investment for you with maximum returns? I would maybe avoid these areas because these are higher or medium risk. What advice would you give to parents in that sense?
So we are in the lucky situation that inflation has brought back interest rates, which is good for savers, bad for capitalists. Capitalists is people who want to deploy funds into a business because it means it's more expensive to get a loan. But for savers and for pensioners especially, and also people who have a cash sum in the bank, now they're getting between, depending on which currency, but between 3 and 6%, let's say, whereas before they're getting 0. And that was, then they had inflation. We had inflation before the inflation spike. But even with money in the bank getting a higher rate than inflation, let's say, for example, in the US, the inflation rate is 3% at the moment, which is where it's at. You can get 4.5%. You're only making 1.5%, which isn't really going to change the world. So what people have to be is open to listen to advice about what is appropriate for them. And I would always say, take it in baby steps. Start small. Never put 100% of your savings into one strategy. Never put it all into the markets. Start on a 3-year journey. To begin with, a 3-year journey, and then as you feel more comfortable and you have the skill set to ask the right questions, then you can increase the amount of money that goes into a conservative strategy. Now, a conservative strategy can mean many things. It will include cash. It will include what we call bonds, which is loans from companies. But it's understanding what is a safe bond, what's a bad bond, and that's where you need a human being to tell you about that and also find out what's appropriate for you. So that's why you need an advisor. There are many great advisors in the world, but you just need to have a conversation and listen about what is the right for you. But I would always say take baby steps to begin with, because if you lose money on, let's say, 25%, it's very different to losing money on 100% of your money. And then you could say, actually, I'm not comfortable with that, so let me do this instead. Okay, but I've actually made money. And what I find with new investors, and I have many new investors of many age groups, you can either go very right at the beginning or very wrong at the beginning. It's always one or the other, never in the middle. And then basically you have someone who's overexcited, or you have someone who's very disappointed. But that's why it's a journey of a minimum of 5 years. Investing should be a journey of 3 to 5 years minimum, ideally longer, because then you have a very unique things called compound return, which will then really help you generate the X factor, or the X factor to making your money work harder for you. But you have to give it time. You have to be patient. I would just say, if you're new to the game, don't do 100%. Do the level which is 20, 30, 50, 75, and test it out. Make sure you've got the right advisor who's listening to you correctly, and find the right strategy. And then once you found the right strategy, then you'll be more confident to take those extra risks or put more of your money into it. And it includes property as well. It's like which property, which area, which country. I mean, there's many different things with money. It's not just investing in the markets. It's also finding the right business to invest in. Which kid entrepreneur do I want to choose from? There's 5 here and they're all great. But it's also about diversification, which is a very big word. But that means, not putting all your eggs in one basket. If you put all your eggs in one basket, it will come crashing down. If you put your eggs, you have to decide which eggs go in which basket. And that is the key to life. For me, very simple. Which eggs in which basket?
Yeah, I agree with that. And we have, on a personal investment level, we have our higher risk ones that give us a higher return.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a gamble. If we lose it, disappointing, but not the end of the world. And then we have our investments that are safe, secure. They bring in the same, residual income every month. Don't have to worry, but it's a slightly lower interest rate than these high ones. And that, for me, that gives me peace of mind, because I'm a very conservative investor. I don't like fluctuations. I don't like checking the market every day. My personality just doesn't work with that.
Yeah.
But I do like to invest where I know it's stable, it's secure, and this money is going to come in, on a monthly basis. Can you explain for lots of people out there, because we talk about compound growth with the kids, and I think it was Albert Einstein said that compound growth is the 8th wonder of the world. Yeah. Those that understand it have it. Those that don't, they pay it. So can you just explain for those that don't understand what compound growth is, what is that? Yeah.
So when let's say you have money in a bank, you receive an interest rate. So at the end, you'll have your money plus an interest rate. So let's say you have 3%. You start with 100. Year one, you're going to have 103 at the end because they paid you 3%. So next year, the 3% will pay you on the 103 and not the 101. So if you escalate it through the years, and this is why we talk about investing for a minimum of 3 years, but then you look to do it every year, your money will automatically grow because it's growing with the return that you get, the capital you started with, the return, and every year that return goes into the capital and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So compounding is compounding your return. So at the end of the day, your money is working for you and not just the bank that it's sitting in.
I love that. Money working for you.
Yeah.
You see, this was a phrase we used to hear as kids growing up, but we never really understood what that meant.
Yeah.
Now, I think kids are getting a lot more financially savvy and understanding that, okay, if I start to save a small amount now at this young age, as you said, it can be 5, it can be 6, little bits over a long period of time, then accumulate to a lot.
Yeah.
And once kids understand that, then...
And also we have some kids that want to save very aggressively and like not do anything. And I'm like, well, is that going to make you happy? At the end of the day, you need to have...
You've got to enjoy it.
You've got to enjoy it. So you're on a milestone you want to get to. You want to enjoy I want to go to an experience. I would do something that's not something that your parent would buy you. or they say you have to, if you want to do experiences, you pay for it. And then it's saving for that. Okay, I managed that milestone, so I'm not so far off that milestone. So you have to enjoy it, else you would lose interest in it. So for kids, it's important for everyone that, we want to buy a handbag at the end of the year. I could buy it today, but then I don't have my compound return. So I miss out on a year's compound return. Where if I leave it in for Christmas because I want to go home with a nice new handbag, then I've actually worked really hard for that. So that mindset for a child or an adult is the same, but it's a matter of learning to enjoy the journey, not just the end. And I think that's very important for the kid entrepreneurs. You have to enjoy the journey, else it's a bit difficult. And it's important to celebrate those milestones, and that's why planning, it all comes back to planning, but that's why looking at your money growing on a monthly basis or a yearly basis is important, and that's why it's important to give it time. So for me, it's really important to see those benefits, but also enjoy the journey, because you have to enjoy it.
Yeah, of course. Otherwise, you get into a Scrooge scenario where you have all this money under your bed.
Exactly.
And you've actually never spent it, and now you're too old to really enjoy it.
Exactly. And that's something that maybe for our kids, I want them to learn. It's not about just enjoying the place at the end, because when you get to the end, maybe you're too old to enjoy it. Exactly. You enjoy it on the way, but don't enjoy it all at the beginning, because else you don't have a middle and end to get to. So you have to then plan, and that's for me the most important thing, is enjoy the journey, enjoy the milestones, and enjoy your hard work, because you work for that. So you should enjoy it, and you shouldn't be afraid of it, and you should be happy when you get to milestone or objective number 1, I want to set up a new business. Okay, now you know the journey, you know how easy it is or hard it is, or the challenges you're going to face, but at the end, you've had a great journey and you had some great mini wins on the way. So I really think it's the same with investing. Enjoy the mini wins. If you want to take money out, a lot of the investment advisors leave your money there, all of it there. I'm like, no, take out part of the return. Why not? Because you should enjoy it. Your money's done well. I've done well for you. So enjoy it. But don't enjoy all of it,
Yeah, little bits.
But it's important to enjoy that journey. And I think it's very important for kids to, or as they are entrepreneurs and as they grow, that they learn about enjoying that journey, the pain and the success. It's an important part of when you get to the end to make it more valuable.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also it's a motivator. I see with kids, whether it's a product that they're, building or a service that they're offering, when they receive that money, they put some aside and they can go and buy something that they want. They want to work again.
Yeah.
Oh, I washed a car and I got 20 dirhams. That's amazing. I spent 10, I saved 10. Where's the next car to wash? If it's all taken away and saved, saved in a bank or piggy bank or wherever, then they don't have that same desire to go out there. And we like getting paid for what we do. It's almost like, somebody having belief in us. Yeah. And kids are very much the same.
And I also think if you're not enjoying it, you're not passionate, you're not giving it 100%.
Of course, yeah. 100%.
So
and kids get bored very easily. So we've got to keep them engaged.
Exactly. You have to keep them engaged a lot. And, if you don't keep them engaged. But I also think, as I say, they're so much more motivated when they enjoy part of the returns at the beginning. And I've seen that through a number of my friends' kids, and it's really interesting to see how motivated they are and how happy they are. But that's what we should be doing, enjoying that journey, being happy and motivated. And the happier you are, the more motivated you are. And that's by enjoying a little bit now, not later. So it's important.
I 100% agree with you. Okay, last topic. I want to talk a little bit about marriage and each person within the marriage, making sure that they do keep a level of control over the financial situation. The reason I'm bringing this up is because very recently I had a very good friend of mine who she took on the role as primary caregiver to the kids, and her husband was the main financial provider. So he had his own business. They were very financially stable, but everything was in his name and under his control. He was only in his very early 40s. He had a massive heart attack and he passed away. So suddenly, she's now left with 2 young children, no access, especially in this region, it's very difficult. Because, when the husband passes, everything goes on to lockdown. So bank accounts were closed, the car was taken away, she lost the house, even her mobile phone was disconnected. So suddenly she's in this helpless situation where not only does she not have access to the money here, but now she's got these 2 children to look after and deal with their emotional turmoil that they're all going through. What advice would you give to families to say, look, it's fine to have the responsible parent who manages the money, be it mum or dad, but how can the whole family make sure, especially here, that everybody is safe and secure? God forbid something terrible like that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So number one is get a will. A will is a piece of paper that should be legalized by someone, but a will which isn't legalized is still a will. I'll come back to the Dubai region in a second on that point, but it's very important as a couple when you have children to have a will about what your desires, if anything happens to one or the other, what will happen to the financials of the family. Is it, the house, the savings, the investments, the business, what happens? So a will is non-negotiable. As soon as you get married, you actually should have a will between the two of you. When you have children, it's very, very important. And then Dubai now accepts, English law. DFC has done a lot of work on this. I have a number of contacts in this region who have been advocating and pushing forward about succession, about when these unfortunate events happen, when you lose a partner, what can happen. Firstly, if you're an international person who's not Muslim, you can actually clarify that you should follow the law of the deceased. So if he was a British national, for example, he should follow the laws of the UK, or if he was French, the French laws are different to the UK laws. There's common law and civil law. And then you should follow that, which would enable then, in her situation, an opportunity to actually fall back on that and get access to money. Dubai and the Emirates is very difficult, and as I said, I've heard the story a couple of times. I haven't actually had any clients experience it because I made sure they had a will, but the account gets frozen. It was all in the name of the husband. They don't have access to it. It becomes extremely difficult and complex and difficult and expensive and emotionally taxing to get it out. So this is why I talked about earlier about succession planning, about next generation. I have many couples that I have looked after. A couple of my clients have unfortunately passed. And even though they are in very harmonious family situations, there's always a challenge.
Things change when money is involved.
So the easy thing is to have a plan, and this is what wills and then, structures around wills, which is a very different topic, but it's an insurance at the end of the day. You have any life insurance, you should have a will. You need to have insurance, and this is what a will does. So for those who don't, then you have to go through the emotional barrier of forcing it. When you've just lost someone, as we all know from losing someone very close to us, you're not in the mindset to think logically. Even if even if you're a coach yourself, even if you're an entrepreneur that's very successful and very connected to your mindset, when you lose a family member, it's very stressful.
Well, because grief, you can't quantify grief or put any kind of logical approach to grief, and everybody deals with it very differently.
Exactly.
What happens if the husband is Muslim and the wife is not here? Because the wills, in that sense,
no. So it only works, as I said, for those non-Muslims. Muslims have to follow the laws of Dubai, and that normally means it's going to the men linear line of the family. So it goes to the boys. If you have 3 kids, 2 girls and 1 boy, the boy will get everything. So this is the challenge of the region, is how to make sure, and there's lots of Muslims who want their daughters to benefit as much as the men, but they recognize that is the rules here, and then they have to do things to make sure that they can benefit the entire family, and that's normally through something called a foundation. So there are ways and means to it in it which is compliant to Islam. There are many people that can approve the strategies that you in place if you are married to a Islamic person, a Muslim person who has this. But again, it's all about that planning and communication, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure it happens. So, for example, in France and in Switzerland, where I'm from, there is forced heirship. So the children get divided the money equally. So if there's 2, it's 50-50. If there's 4, it's 25%.
Irrespective of the gender of the child.
Of that. So, in Europe, there's a lot of this. And so, parents have to plan for this. So it's not just Dubai that's in this way mode. It's the way that the societies think it's best to plan. So Muslims at the moment still are evolving in terms of what they want for the female generation of the region. That's a whole another topic. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of amazing Muslims, and I look after a couple, and they're so passionate about their daughters, and they're so passionate about making sure that they plan, and they have planned the fair solution for all their children, because they love each one as much as each other.
Yeah, of course.
So it's important to plan. Planning comes back.
Planning and communication.
Exactly.
They're the 2 words we'll take away from today's conversation. Yeah. Planning and communication.
Exactly.
Rebecca, how can people reach out to you? So if, somebody wants to speak to you about advising their own family, where do they find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, on my website, which is www.rebeccajaneellis.com. So very easy to understand. You can call me directly. Happy to share my details with anyone. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but for me, LinkedIn and my website would be the best place to find me.
Amazing. And we'll put all those links under the video anyway. Rebecca, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and I've learned so much too. And I'm looking forward to building something together with the kids in the business side, and then also the finances.
I'm very excited.
The 2 are together, so one goes hand in hand. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I hope that you got as much out of this session as I did. Rebecca's her knowledge just goes on and on and on, and I could talk to her for hours. We'll definitely do a part 2. And I'd also like to maybe bring some of the kids into the studio that Rebecca's been working with. So if you do want more information about what Rebecca is offering, reach out. All the links are underneath. And, as parents, let's just take charge of our family's finances. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.